Okay, good morning. Before we get started this morning, I have some announcements. What was that, Kathy? We on? Okay, we're on. You're live. We're live. All right, some announcements. I know this year postage went up, but it didn't affect us, really. However, we are still adjusting our postage on the online store. So hopefully by Tuesday of this week, we'll have adopted the dynamic USPS shipping methods. Like I've said earlier, it will make it fair to everyone because everything will be based off of weight. No matter what you order, it'll be adjusted to what you ordered by weight every time. So that's coming. That'll be instituted hopefully this week. Be on the lookout as we go through more and more of the bookstore. We're finding more and more duplicates in the library and things like that. We are adding them to the bookstore, and we do intend on adding duplicate pamphlets. We have them by the 1,000 here. Those will be uploaded onto the online store, hopefully by the end of next month. And also, we had an old YouTube channel, America's Promise Ministries, years ago before I got here. It was one that we used exclusively until I got here because it wasn't given the password to get into the YouTube account. Well, I have the password now. It's been recovered. So we are running both YouTube channels concurrently, just so you know. So we'll be posting both. It doesn't matter which one you use. You can use either one. You'll be up to date. And I'm going through Pastor Dave Barley's DVDs, all the way from DVD 1 all the way to the end. Most of those, I'm ripping the video from the DVDs, and those will be uploaded on both YouTube channels throughout the year. Most of these sermons by Dave's have never been seen online because they were given before online existed and before there was the means to upload anything online. So be on the lookout. A lot of Dave's sermons will be seen for the first time this year online. So we're really excited about that. I have a library of 500 or so DVDs to go through. I'm on DVD 14, so bear with me. Bear with me. It's a long process to transcode them. I'm using X265 1080p, so we'll be upscaling them, but I'll not be adjusting the quality. They were given back in the late 90s, so the audio and video, it is what it is. I bet, I don't even know the camera they were using, but I suppose at best it was 720. It was at least 480p at a 4:3 ratio. However, they are being upscaled to 1080p at 16:9 for YouTube formatting, just so you know. That's some metrics for you. And of course, next week, I will not be preaching, so will not be a live sermon next week. We will be having church here, but there will not be a live stream of anything next week. So, just so you know. All right, and then of course, last week we were talking about fitness, faith, leadership, whole health. So, there was a YouTube comment, of course. Now remember, I pulled up the Matthew 28, which of course is the Great Commission, correct? And then I said there was a distinction between Jesus' statements in Matthew 15, which were earlier, about the only to the house of Israel, correct? You know where I'm at? Okay, and I told you when I mentioned this, I always get hit, and sure enough, I got hit. So here's the statement on YouTube. Pastor Reed, the Great Commission was to the Israel people, as was Jesus' statement of having come only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. The Israel nations, Israel people, today are all around the world, but that doesn't mean the Great Commission was to all the world. Martha's dad, Pastor Sheldon Emery, if you want to be formal, would take exception to your implications, that being that Israel was to be seen being a light to the nations. If these are your convictions in your ministry, perhaps APM should change being renamed to AP Missionary Ministry and pursue supporting those who go out to all the world. And I would remind you that this man is making a comment on the World Wide Web. So I would consider that a missionary outreach, wouldn't you? Okay, the www in your URL stands for that, by the way. Worldwide. Okay, so here's what I said. This is for the benefit of people that don't use YouTube or hear the comments or see the comments, audio and video DVD subscribers as well. It's important to address the distinctions between Matthew 15, and that's where Jesus says, only to the lost sheep, and then Matthew 28, of course, which is the go out to all the world, right? As they highlight different stages in Jesus' ministry and its broader implications. Matthew 15:24, Jesus explicitly states, I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel, right? This underscores his initial mission to bring the message of salvation to the Israel people. I'm reading the comment I left in response to this man's comment last week. As the covenant people, Israel was given the opportunity to first hear and respond to the message of the kingdom. This aligns later with Paul's statement in Romans 1:16, emphasizing that the gospel is first to the Jew, Judite, and then for the Gentile, ethnos, nation. However, Matthew 28 shifts the scope of the mission, and Jesus says, "Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you." That was the verse I brought up last week, and remember I emphasized that it was not names, plural, it was name. Remember, that's what we were talking about last week. Here, Jesus commissions his disciples to extend the message of the gospel beyond Israel to all nations. This universal mandate reflects the fulfillment of God's promise to Abraham that through his descendants, all nations on the earth would be blessed. Genesis 22. It's part of the Abrahamic covenant. While it is true that many physical descendants of Israel are now dispersed worldwide, the Great Commission clearly calls for evangelizing to all nations, regardless of ethnic or cultural lineage. This is a logical progression of God's redemptive plan, moving from the specific Israel, currently, to the universal, eons to come. Now, I often wonder when people bring these up, especially concerning the Great Commission and to whom we're supposed to be preaching, why is it that they have to be two distinct missions that run separately from each other? You see? It is always either it's Israel preaching to Israel or it's nothing. You see? I say that the two missions can be run concurrently, like this. We'll take pork because it's an easy law and it can be proven in a matter of moments, right? Say I'm talking exclusively to an Israelite, but there are some non-Israelites standing by that may be within earshot, and I tell them about the benefits of not eating pork, and of course it's lawful to not eat unclean animals, correct? And other non-Israelites overhear my discussion with this Israelite, and they resolve within their own minds that perhaps the principles I was talking about would be beneficial if they did them in their own lives. Is that true? Does it happen in this earth? Okay, so in other words, is that an observable reality? Very much so. So those messages don't have to be distinct, do they? They can run concurrently. And like I say, I have a worldwide outreach on the internet via YouTube and BitChute, sometimes Rumble. So I don't know who everyone's ethnicity is that watches these videos and whether or not the words I have brought to them in this message rings true, you see. All right. Rest assured, and of course, remember, he told us we need to change this ministry's name. Rest assured, the ministry's name isn't going anywhere. After all, America's Promise, APM, stands for America's Promise Ministries, not Ask Personal Modifications. We teach the global implications of the Great Commission as part of Israel's divine mission because Jesus made it crystal clear. Go into all the world and preach the gospel to all creation. Mark 16:15. We just read that this morning. Isaiah backed this up long before, saying, "Is it too small a thing for you to be my servant to restore the tribes of Jacob? I will also make you a light for the Gentiles." That's Hebrew, it still means nations. Isaiah 49:6. Even Joel chimed in, "I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh." Joel 2:28. So while we respect differing views, we'll continue focusing on the big picture. Israel first, yes, but also the rest of the world, because Revelation 7:9 reminds us the restitution of all things won't just look like one nation. It'll be every tribe, people, nation, and language. King James calls it tongue, correct? All right. That's the mission, and our name reflects that eternal truth. No edits needed. Speaking of Pastor Emery, I'll paste a few statements he wrote himself concerning this ministry's beliefs and focus. Now, I'm not going to paste those to you. I'll actually show you. I've brought up one of the original America's Promise statement of beliefs. You can see it's got the old symbol on it, and it even says here, America's Promise Radio. Just so you know, it's dated. This is dated. And of course, it says P.O. Box 5334, Phoenix, Arizona. So this is the original Lord's Covenant Statement of Beliefs. We'll read what Pastor Emery himself wrote concerning his ministry's mission. He says, "We believe that Jesus Christ ascended into heaven, Mark 16:19, and where he makes intercession for us as our only high priest, and that he shall personally return, take the throne of David, and rule on earth over all kindreds and tongues. Pastor Emery wrote that. Here's another one. We believe that God's law was given only to Israel, that it was given for Israel's good, but that if Israel was to be punished, Israel was to be punished if it was disregarded. And that law eventually was to be administered to the entire world. Okay, so the statements I said last week do align with Pastor Emery's vision for this ministry, do they not? Here's another one if you don't believe me. We believe that prophecy about Israel has been and is being and will continue to be fulfilled in them as the true Israel of God. They come under all the covenants, promises, and prophecies that God made with Israel and which Christ came to confirm. Only these people have the Bible, believe in Jesus Christ, call on his name, are called by his name, and have used his law for their civil governments, and establish a weekly Sabbath by law, and carry his word to the other races of the earth. And we are now subject to the worldwide attack by the enemies of Jesus Christ, who are organizing all the heathen under the red banner of anti-communist world communism, antichrist world communism. We hereby resolve before Almighty God and in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ that we will preach and teach these truths and all the truths of the Holy Scriptures, so help us God. Pastor Emery and I agree, once again. So, I hope that this clarification provides a balanced perspective and assures you that the ministry remains committed to faithfully following Scripture's teachings. Your feedback is deeply appreciated. There you go. So you're free to leave comments under a pseudonym, handle, or moniker, but just so you know, it isn't a public forum, and I will see them, read them, and respond to them correctly, with a fair and balanced view, of course. But I believe that man was mistaken in having us change our church's name. We preach the same thing as Pastor Emery did when he founded it. Israel first, and then a light to the nation by the end of the age. Okay. So this morning I plan to bring a message of hope and reassurance both to our people and our nation. Many Americans today are both anxious and optimistic about the state of the nation and its future, and yet we as believers, we have God's Word, and we know that it's a message of encouragement and comfort. And of course, we'll be reading from the book of Isaiah today, so if you want, you can turn to Isaiah chapter 41. We'll know this is end-time prophecy, but we'll get to that later. Now, chapter 41 speaks to the Israel people as they're in a place of despair, and it offers those people hope and the promise of restoration. And just as God assured Israel of old, he speaks to us today. Okay? So look at Isaiah 41, verse 8 through 10. Be thou Israel, art my servant, Jacob, whom I have chosen, the seed of Abraham my friend, thou whom I have taken from the ends of the earth, and called thee from the chief men thereof, and said unto thee, Thou art my servant, I have chosen thee, and not cast thee away. Fear thou not, for I am with thee. Be not dismayed, for I am thy God. I will strengthen thee, yea, I will help thee, yea, I will uphold thee with the right hand of my righteousness. Okay, you were just talking about the right hand this morning, weren't we? There it is. All right, now notice here, God is addressing who? Be thou Israel, art my servant, Jacob, whom I have chosen, the seed of Abraham my friend. Okay? So he's referring to Israel as his servant, and he's referring to them as being the offspring of Abraham. Why? Because this reminds the Israel people and us of the special relationship we have with God, specifically a covenant relationship. You see? Which is grounded in the promises made to Abraham, our ancestor. And these promises are, of course, known as the Abrahamic covenant. All right. Of course, if you'd like to read more, we do offer one of Pastor Emery's books, just in case you think my sermons and his diverge. He's wrote about the same thing I'm preaching about this morning in this book, the Abrahamic covenants. Are they fulfilled or forgotten? I highly encourage you to read those books. Anything that we have here is highly educational. So the Abrahamic covenant, and of course here, Thou whom I have taken from the ends of the earth, and called thee from the chief men thereof, and said unto thee, Thou art my servant. Okay, so you see what's going on here. God reminds his Israel people, and us of course, that he brought us from distant places. And of course he regathered us, as we well know. And God still, in this age, has plans and purposes for us. He has not abandoned his people or rejected them, despite our struggles. And of course, if you'd like to understand more about the regathering of Israel in the end of the age, read another one of Pastor Emery's books, which I highly recommend, Heirs of the Promise. You'll find him and I agree once again. Okay? Heirs of the Promise. Of course, we know prophecy says that God would scatter Israel, he would sift them among the nations, correct? Okay, and we understand here, the function here is that God has taken them from the ends of the earth and done something with them. He's called them together for a special purpose, right? A covenantal purpose. Now look here, it says, God says, fear thou not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. Of course, fear not. You see, that's a call to us to trust him even in difficult or uncertain times as we face today. And he promises to sustain us with his power. Of course, this right hand of my righteousness. Other translations will say right hand of my justice. Okay? Assuring us of his ability to both protect and deliver. And by the way, this phrase, fear not, is found throughout the book of Isaiah. He's constantly reassuring Israel that God is with us and that we are not to fear or worry over things. Jesus himself asked us, what do we add to ourselves by worrying about tomorrow? Correct? All right. Now, just as God made these promises to our forefathers and placed a special purpose upon them, we too, in this nation, have been uniquely blessed as a people. We are to continue to act as God's Christian remnant and uphold values of freedom, faith, and justice. Okay? We talked all about that this year already. Now, speaking of today and the state of the nation, I have observed over the last few weeks a renewed optimism, in some cases a cautionary optimism for many people in the nation. Have you guys seen that for a lot of people? Much of it stems from President Trump's recent re-election. Wouldn't you say? Okay. So there are a number of positive impacts that he can have upon Christians and kingdom believers alike. And notice I said can. What he said can impact us positively. These positives could impact the nation as a whole. Now, it's not all good, neither is it all bad, but I try to bring a balanced viewpoint at least. After all, President Trump is a mortal man, and no mortal man is perfect. There is only one of those, correct? We know, yes. So as long as we have a mortal man in office, we're not going to have a perfect man in office, you understand? Now, I bring a balanced viewpoint because a lot of people are worrying themselves into an early grave, focusing on only the negative. So this morning, we're going to look at the beneficial this morning. And by that, I mean the practical, the constructive, the efficacious. All right? And the reason why I don't have, reason why I hammer on the people that are constantly being negative Nancy's is because they usually present a one-sided argument. You guys know it as cherry picking. More scholarly term would be confirmation bias. Okay, and they selectively present evidence or data that aligns only with their opinions or their beliefs, while disregarding or omitting counter arguments or contradictory information. You see that a lot, especially with keyboard warriors nowadays, especially with the advent of Facebook and other social media sites and other ways to put out information, and in most cases, misinformation. Okay, that's because they use the selective use of evidence. So they're only going to bring up what's convenient to them and what proves their point, be it negative or positive. It's not balanced, you see. And of course, they ignore context, which is a big problem. And the effect of that is that the misinformation and polarizing of a lot of people. You see, so they'll render other arguments that are counter to theirs as ineffective or unimportant. So we have to watch out for that thing. So like I said, we're just going to focus on the beneficial today and taking Trump at his word. That's all we can do, right? Okay. So from what I've read and observed and what others have said, one of the most significant aspects of Trump's leadership is his commitment to preserving and promoting values that align with our faith. He seems to do that quite a lot. His planned policies for the next 4 years may offer an opportunity for us to see our beliefs reflected in national government. For one thing, Trump has been a staunch defender of the rights of Christians to practice and share our faith without fear, specifically without fear of persecution. That's what he said. Right? That's a good thing. Can you argue that isn't a good thing with me? Now, Trump's not perfect. Is he better than Biden? Okay, yeah. All right. Case in point. Okay, so Trump, he speaks to Christian Americans. Right? Now, a lot of people say this is a bias for white evangelical Christians. Let's go with Christians this morning, okay? We're not going to split hairs. Trump's also, in his administration's made efforts to appeal the Johnson Amendment. You guys are familiar with that, of course. Okay, for the benefit of those who are not. The Johnson Amendment is a provision under the U.S. tax code from 1954, okay? And that prohibits tax-exempt organizations or nonprofits, like this church, charities as well, from endorsing or opposing political candidates. You see, so that was the Johnson Amendment. It was named after its sponsor, Lyndon B. Johnson, who was at the time a senator. Okay. Trump's opposition to this Johnson Amendment, to me, demonstrates his wish that the church's voice is heard and remains strong in the public forum. You see, so that's another positive. Okay. Trump is also an advocate of pro-life, right? As he and his administration have consistently opposed abortion, and instead they support the sanctity of life, which of course aligns with our beliefs, do they not? Again, a positive. Now, as we well know, the executive branch appoints Supreme Court justices, right? Okay, his choice in justices are those who uphold biblical values, which has a foundation, of course, if you think about it, for protecting our rights for years to come. The courts impact issues of religious liberty, parental rights, and moral legislation, all of which are paramount to kingdom believers. Are they not? All right. Now, these are just a few positives that Trump brings to the table as president. And he also wishes, he said, to strengthen the family and community. Okay, and here's just a few things he said concerning family and community. He wishes to promote economic stability, focus on job creation, the increase in wages, and support for small businesses, right? That's a good thing. Now, just in case you think Pastor Reed has jumped upon the Mystery Babylon bandwagon, I would remind you of Jeremiah's words to old Israel while they were yet in bondage and under the control of old Babylon. Jeremiah 29:7. And seek the peace of the city, Babylon, whether I have caused you to be carried away captives, and pray unto the Lord for it. For in peace thereof shall ye have peace. Okay. So if the city thrives, you thrive. If the economy's good, that's a good thing for you too. Right? Is that what Jeremiah is saying? Pray for the city. Pray for the nation. Pray for those who are over you. Because if the country thrives, you thrive. All right? And of course, that is nothing more nor less than an observable reality once again, is it not? Okay, a thriving economy strengthens communities and enables churches like this one, like America's Promise, to expand their ministries. So it's a good thing, once again. Trump also desires to uphold parental rights in education, another good thing, especially concerning radical ideologies like critical race theory and this whole messy gender ideology thing. Okay, he's supporting parental rights. That's a good thing. He's also vocally supported Christian unity, and he has encouraged us as Christians to come together in both prayer and action for the good of the nation. I can agree with that. Right? As a matter of fact, I tell you guys to do that all the time from this pulpit. And he said, quote, Americans of faith are the soul of our country, end quote. I agree. Now, I know a great many people right now are running to their phones and their keyboards and telling me Trump didn't place his left hand on the Bible, Pastor Reed, when he was inaugurated on the 20th. And that makes him a devil or a deist or an atheist. I've seen all the posts myself. Like I said, it's a cherry picking. And of course, since he didn't put his hand on the Bible, that spells doom for him, his administration, in this nation for the next 4 long years. Yet instead of ascribing that theory and adding fuel to the fire, let's just stick with the facts. Just the facts, all right? First of all, when it comes to the inauguration, it was notably rushed. You guys see that? Okay. And the event was moved indoors to the Capitol Rotunda due to extreme weather, right? Some think it was due to ensure his safety as well. Okay, makes sense. Now, we haven't had an indoor inauguration since before my time. 1985. 1985 was the last time this was done, okay? Chief Justice Roberts also began administering the oath before First Lady Melania Trump had a chance to get the Bible straight. Did you guys see that? Yeah. Okay, notably rushed. And is it possible that the deviation from the outdoor tradition to the inside was due to these things? To him not putting, is it possible? Could be. And it is a tradition to put your hand on the Bible, by the way. It's a tradition. The U.S. Constitution does not require or mandate the use of a Bible, or any book for that matter. Neither does it specify any placement of the hand when being sworn into office. These practices are traditional, not legally required. Okay, so he still did it by the book by not having his hand on the book. Okay. And I would remind you as well that the swearing in of a president with their hand on a Bible does not guarantee an effective, impactful, valuable, or beneficial administration either. Right? Nobody ever brings that up. Yeah. Balanced, fair and balanced. Pastor Reed's fair and balanced. Like I said, the gesture is a symbolic tradition rather than a determining factor of leadership quality, success in policy, or ethical governance. Right? It's just a tradition. A president's effectiveness is determined by their decisions, their leadership qualities, and ability to address the nation's challenges, not by the manner of their oath-taking. So relax a little bit. Really, the very presence of the Bible during the event communicates to me Trump's personal choice of wanting to use it, even if he didn't, right? Which shouldn't be ignored. He could have had any other text present, or opted not to use the book at all. Okay? The fact that the Bible was there reflects tradition, not substance. So, like I said, relax a little bit. And by the way, Joe Biden, Barack Obama, George W. Bush, and Bill Clinton, both terms, were all sworn in with their hands on Bibles. And just look at their terms in office. So relax a little bit, okay? It's all right. We're going to be fine. Anyway, President Trump's recent re-election in 2025, as far as I've seen and observed, has reignited hope for many Americans, emphasizing unity, patriotism, and the restoration of national pride. All good things. All good things. Of course, this mirrors a hope God gave Israel once upon a time as they prepared to return from exile. And it should also remind us that God can use leaders, and he does use leaders to fulfill his purposes, right? Okay, Isaiah 41, verses 14 through 16. Fear not. There's that repetition again, Israel. Fear not, even in tumultuous times. Fear not, thou worm Jacob, and ye men of Israel. I will help thee, saith the Lord, and thy Redeemer, the Holy One of Israel. That Holy One of Israel is a title specific only to the book of Isaiah, by the way. You can check it out if you don't believe me. It is. Behold, I will make thee a new sharp threshing instrument having teeth. Thou shalt thresh the mountains and beat them small, and thou shalt make the hills as chaff. Thou shalt fan them, and the wind shall carry them away, and the whirlwind shall scatter them. And thou shalt rejoice in the Lord, and shalt glory in the Holy One of Israel. Okay, a lot going on. And this passage, of course, is part of a broader context in Isaiah 41, which we will get into studying next month, next time, okay? Now, Isaiah 41, chapter 41, is the reassuring of Israel in a time of exile and helplessness and challenges. And God is reassuring Israel, his people, of his power, faithfulness, and Israel's unique role as his chosen people, okay? This chapter imparts that God will help us, his people, overcome their oppressors and restore them to their intended purpose. Okay, and of course we understand our covenant theology. All right. Let's look at this a little closer. Isaiah 41:14. Fear not, thou worm Jacob, and ye men of Israel. I will help thee, saith the Lord, and thy Redeemer, the Holy One of Israel. Fear not. Once again, addressing Israel's anxiety because God is our provider and protector. Correct? So these words were spoken to old Israel. I challenge you to take these words as if they were spoken to you today by the prophet Isaiah, because we're in the same situation. These are our forefathers. They're just like us. Now, whenever God addresses Israel, or his people, as Israel or Jacob, we've said this before, he's reminding them of their covenant identity. Okay? He also used end-time nicknames like Jezreel, Jezreel. It's always reminding us when you see these words in the Bible and end-time prophecy of our covenant identity and unique purpose unto God. And of course, he says he is the one who helps us, or he will directly intervene on our behalf. Correct? Okay. Worm Jacob. Israel here is exactly a low or helpless or vulnerable state. Right? Of course, here we have a low state or status, and we must have God's power because we cannot do it ourselves. It's worm Jacob. Here he says, he is our Redeemer. Right there, Redeemer. If you go back to the Hebrew, I'm not sure the number off the top of my head, but it is Hebrew word goel. Goel is what that word Redeemer comes from. Of course, that refers to a relative responsible for rescuing or protecting a family member. Check Leviticus 25:25 for that law. This, of course, communicates to us what? That God is family to us, his children. Israel is his firstborn, right? Okay. So God is our Redeemer, and of course, we are his sons and daughters. This is unique. This, like I said, this Redeemer, the Holy One of Israel, is unique to the book of Isaiah. It's very interesting. 41:15. Behold, I will make thee a new sharp threshing instrument, having teeth. Thou shalt thresh the mountains and beat them small, and shall make the hills as chaff. It's lots of end-time prophecy, symbolic language here, isn't there? Okay. Notice Israel now has gone from worm to threshing tool. Having teeth now, right? Okay. And that's, threshing tool does what? Separates grain from chaff. Now, not tares from wheat. That's the angel's job. Right? Okay. Grain from chaff. Okay? So, in other words, we're giving teeth and made sharp. So, this worm, this metamorphosis from worm to instrument suggests that Israel, though previously was weak and effective, will become a powerful tool in God's hands at the end of the age. Right? Okay? Thresh mountains. Mountains symbolize nations, of course, and at times in Bible prophecy as well, great obstacles or challenges that oppose God's people. Okay? And here we see that with God's help, Israel will overcome these things. You see? And of course, chaff is lightweight and easily removed. So these obstacles will be totally destroyed. Right? Okay, and notice the obstacles are done away completely when faced with God's power working through his people Israel. You see that? What's going on in that verse? 41:16, thou shalt fan them, and the wind shall carry them away. That's known as winnowing. Okay? And the whirlwind shall scatter them, and thou shalt rejoice in the Lord, and shall glory in the Holy One of Israel. Okay, so winnowing is the process of tossing threshed grain into the air and allowing the wind to carry away the chaff. Okay, you've seen that practice before? All right. Of course, the heavier, more valuable grain falls to the ground. All right. The process in the Bible, when you see this, symbolizes divine judgment. Divine judgment, because who controls the winds? It's God that does the choosing. Okay. All goes along. All one continuous thing, you see. God removes them with ease, no matter how powerful these mountains are for his people Israel. All right, and of course, rejoice. The Israel people are seeing rejoicing as a people in who? Themselves, President Trump? The Lord. because there is no other way this would have been done except by the power of God. We'll have no choice but to turn and rejoice in God, you see. For it was he that accomplished this with his power and, of course, his faithfulness to Israel. You see? It's a covenant work. Now, as you read along in Isaiah, you also come to chapter 45, and that's, of course, a part of restoring and empowering the nation. God used a leader in chapter 45 named Cyrus, king from the east. Very good. And, of course, God used that leader Cyrus to bring about the empowering and change of Israel for the good, right? It's Isaiah chapter 45. And, of course, just as God did that, God can use, and he does use, modern leaders to bring about our renewal. Does he not? Okay. So while today we feel like the challenges that we have in this nation are mountains, such as things like political division, social unrest, we may feel like these things are too large for us to conquer or too complex to overcome. God says he will empower us to rise above these obstacles and fulfill his purposes. You see, that's what he's telling us, this nation. Of course, our Bible is full of examples about how transformation in the nation and the people of Israel occurred by God using ordinary people to achieve extraordinary things. There's a myriad of Bible stories on that, is there not? All right. Most of them didn't want to be used that way, as a matter of fact. Isaiah 41, verses 17 through 20. When the poor and needy seek water, and there is none, and their tongue faileth for thirst, I, the Lord, will hear them. I, the God of Israel, will not forsake them. I will open rivers in high places and fountains in the midst of the valleys. I will make the wilderness a pool of water, and the dry land springs of water. I will plant in the wilderness the cedar, the shittim. Other translations call that the acacia tree, used in building the ark and other holy objects. The shittim tree, and the myrtle, and the oil tree. I will set in the desert the fir tree and the pine and the box tree together, that they may see and know and consider and understand together that the hand of the Lord has done this, and the Holy One of Israel has created it. All right. So here again we see God's sovereignty and, of course, his role as Redeemer and Protector of Israel. And, of course, this passage here addresses his commitment to providing for his people in their time of need, you see. All right, the poor and the needy. Poor and the needy, of course, that refers to Israelites who are both spiritually and physically weak and vulnerable, especially during times of unrest or hardship, okay? And of course, water here is both literal and metaphorical, okay? Literal in that it's a life-sustaining necessity, and of course, metaphorical, water is indicative of spiritual refreshment, okay? And we see that God, of course, intervenes and answers, reassuring us of his covenantal love and nature towards his people. You see the hope given in these messages. Of course, God contrasts desolation with abundance in this passage, you see. So we have high river places, and what do we have here? Rivers in high places and fountains in the midst of valleys. So what does that mean? The high rivers. Rivers in high places. A place you would not normally find water. A place where you would least expect to find water. Very high. Rivers aren't high geographically, are they? I know some are higher in elevation than others. But do you look for rivers up in the mountains? No. I'm not talking about runoff. Okay, we have runoff here. That's not a river. All right. So, if God's going to provide open rivers in high places and fountains in the midst of valleys, which are generally dry and barren, according to geography over there, right, then this spiritual refreshment must be a miraculous thing once again, you see. So, we see that the wilderness is miraculously transformed, and of course we see the diversity and abundance of trees. Now a lot of people will personify these as people, but that's not consistent. It's not consistent enough to do this here. So trees. In this case, the restoration of this wilderness, this desert, of course, is symbolic of what? Richness and abundance, for one, because of all the water. Trees aren't going to grow there without it, right? And of course, trees are symbolic of what? Strength, durability. Okay? So apparently, God's going to regather his scattered people into a nation one day where it's going to be restored, a rich country with fertile lands that'll be a rich and strong nation. Right? Now that makes sense. Of course, discussing the wilderness is something America's Promise has always done. We understand the transformation of the wilderness. Desert is the rose? Okay. So, of course, we see there's that Holy One of Israel again. And we see that this time, once again, Israel will recognize God as the source of these miracles. You see? So these acts are not only done by God for our provision, but they're also done as a means of revelation to us. You see? Very good. All right. And as we've discussed, of course, in previous sermons of my own and throughout this ministry, as a whole, we've applied the wilderness and its restoration and its transformation to this nation. So we're not going to get into that today, okay? But we've seen, and we've discussed already this morning, economic revitalization, community healing, and spiritual renewal are all part of God's provision as well, are they not? These are blessings God brings upon the nation. Is it possible, then, that our leaders and their initiatives to support small businesses, strengthen the economy, and protect Christian religious freedoms are modern examples of God's provision upon us as his people today? I think so. I think so. So just as God guided Israel through their leaders, God can guide America through its leaders, keeping in mind all times his sovereignty. Right? Okay. So I'll close with this call and hope. Okay? The key themes we can take away from Isaiah 41 today, like I said, next time we'll get into it a little more, are that God's sovereign. So in other words, he controls the rise and fall of nations and their leaders. Right? Okay. God's faithfulness is what? His covenant to his people. And it remains unshakable and unbreakable. Okay? That's what Israel needed to hear back then. This is what Israel needs to hear today. Of course, we will have victory through faith in the Holy One of Israel. God transforms his people from weakness to strength, just like he told us he would, and he did. Now, Isaiah's message as a whole serves as a reminder to us that God remains in control even during turbulent times, you see. In the face of our nation's challenges, we must see these moments as opportunities for renewal and revival, of course. And I challenge you to step into the role as a Christian, leading by example as both salt and light, to bring healing upon our people and our nation. Okay? Our ultimate trust, of course, lies in God alone, not mortal men. Keep that in mind. Yet we are called to discern and support leaders who align with God's purposes. Our trust and support in them work together to reflect God's kingdom upon the earth. You see? We'll close in Daniel 2:21. And he changeth the times and the seasons. He removeth kings and setteth up kings. He giveth wisdom unto the wise and knowledge to them that know understanding. Now, where do wisdom, knowledge, and understanding come from? The Bible's very clear. It comes from the Bible. And you see here, God. And God, of course, changes the times and the seasons. He removes rulers, and he sets up rulers. And he gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to them that know understanding. People that read his Bible and believe it. Study the Bible. So let us go forth with faith, hope, and the confidence that God is faithful to us, his children, Israel, and he keeps his promises. That's all we have for today.